go first?
Picture this: sandy toes, salt-kissed air, and zero worries, even if your health needs dictate that a little extra planning is required. CompassPal Travel is the world's first physician-led travel concierge service specializing in safe, comfortable journeys for clients with palliative or supportive care needs. Whether it's a bucket list trip, family event, or treatment abroad, we combine medical insight with expert logistics to craft bespoke itineraries, provide physician accompaniment, and connect clients with local care providers should the need arise. We're not just a travel concierge, we're your partners in creating safe, joyful, and unforgettable journeys for travelers with unique health needs. When you dial CompassPal Travel, you're not met by a call center maze. You're greeted by a dedicated expert who actually listens. They will arrange for you to meet with our health assessment specialist. A trained medical professional, our health assessment specialist, chats with you to discuss your medical needs and travel dreams. Think of it as your roadmap to relaxation with extra seatbelts for peace of mind. Then we craft a bespoke travel plan, comfy flights, accessible transfers, all your specialty requests met, and hand-picked experiences, just your perfect escape. We lock in every detail, flights, hotels, even transport, so you can focus on the really important stuff like coordinating outfits and not trip details. Before you jet off, you'll receive our client handbook, so you'll know exactly what you should expect. You'll also meet your accompanying physician days before your travel to establish rapport and make sure that you are truly comfortable. Whether your day consists of a gentle yoga class or you want to reach out to us for a quick check-in, our team is just a call away. Your well-being, comfort, safety, and of course, satisfaction are always our top priorities. After your journey, we check in to make sure everything went smoothly, and we always welcome your suggestions so we can keep raising the bar. Are you ready to travel beyond limits? Reach out today and let's chart your next unforgettable journey.
Good evening, everyone, and I am so happy to be here for the very first of our monthly webinars hosted by CompassPal Travel. You just saw the intro video to see exactly what we are about, but essentially we provide palliative patients as well as those with any complex or chronic illnesses the opportunity to travel freely without any restriction. Here joining me tonight, we have Missy Moore and Mahogany Hines from the USA and Canada respectively, both very well-established professionals in their areas of expertise. And hopefully we're going to have some lively discussion about living well with chronic illnesses. So first, we're going to welcome Mahogany Hines, who's a clinical nurse specialist in palliative care at St. Peter's Hospital in Hamilton, and the current president of the Canadian Palliative Care Nursing Association. She's a founding member of CPCNA's executive board and has held leadership roles with the RNAO and the Palliative Care Consultants Network of Ontario. An experienced educator with a Master of Health Science in Bioethics, Mahogany served on recent RNAO expert panels for the best practice guidelines and has been a tireless advocate for equity and accessibility in palliative care, including work that supported the Compassionate Care Act. Her award-winning practice has earned honors such as the Larry Librock Prize in Ethics and End-of-Life Care and Brock University's Distinguished Alumni Award. Outside of work, she's also known to don a referee stripe for the Niagara Roller Derby League. We're delighted to have Mahogany with us today. So over to you, Mahogany.
Thanks so much. And welcome, everyone. It's my pleasure to be here today. And I'm going to talk to you today about chronic illness, I'm going to talk to you a little bit about chronic illness and life-limiting illnesses and palliative care approach, but I'm also going to talk about chronic illness that may not end your life, but definitely has an impact on the way that people suffer and walk through their lives as well. So hopefully everybody can see my slides. I think we're good to go for my slides. So I'm going to go through this. But as I begin, one of the things that I would like to do is I would like to begin with a land acknowledgement. So I live in Niagara
Sorry,
Falls. Oh, that's
sorry.
okay.
I'm not seeing your slides, actually.
Let's see if that works. Is that working? Let's see.
I'm so sorry.
One sec. What I'll do is I'll stop sharing and I will try again. It looks like you're seeing my presenter slides now. The joys of technology.
I know. Guys, we
And
did this
never,
before.
it never
That was
fails.
perfect.
It's okay. So let's try and see what you see. Can you see my slides? You see enter full screen. Audience. Do you see that now?
No, let me see something.
It says that I'm sharing. Nothing like technology.
Here we
There we
go.
go. There we go. Awesome. So just with the pause, I'm going to do a land acknowledgement. It is common practice that we do. We try to do in Canada is one of the pieces of truth and reconciliation for those Indigenous populations whose land we live upon. So I would like to begin with a land acknowledgement as a resident of Niagara Falls, Ontario. I acknowledge that I live and work on the traditional territory of the Haudenosaunee and Anishinaabe peoples within the lands protected by the Dish with One Spoon Wampum Belt Covenant, an agreement to peaceably share and care for resources around the Great Lakes. This land is part of the enduring territory of many Indigenous nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation, the Six Nations of Grand River, and others who have cared for these lands since time immemorial. I'm grateful to live here and recognize that this land was never surrendered and that colonial systems of power continue to impact Indigenous peoples today. As we reflect upon our responsibilities as settlers and guests on this land, I commit to ongoing work of truth and reconciliation and decolonization. The Truth and Reconciliation Commission has laid out 94 calls to action that demand our attention and our accountability. It is not enough to acknowledge the past, we must also take part in reshaping the future through justice, education, and respect. I want to hold space for the lives of missing and murdered Indigenous women, girls, and Two-Spirit peoples as well. These losses are not isolated tragedies, but they are deeply rooted in colonial violence and systemic injustice. We remember those who have been taken and support survivors and families. And we demand transformative change to ensure safety, dignity, and equity for Indigenous women and gender diverse people. Let this acknowledgement be more than words. Let this be a call to learn, to listen, and to act. So as part of a land acknowledgement, one of the other pieces is not just reading about what a land acknowledgement is, but these are my personal commitments to action. So to continue to learn the history of the peoples whose land I occupy, but also to use my voice and my platforms to raise awareness and act upon injustice untowards Indigenous peoples, as well as to make a concerted effort to protect and honor the lands I live, work, and play upon. I would encourage you to learn about the lands that you live upon because many of the lands that you live upon across North America and probably in other countries as well, I don't know where everybody is joining from, much of those lands were taken from Indigenous peoples. And I think it's really important for us to acknowledge that we may not have been the first people on these lands, but we have responsibility to take care of them. And we have a responsibility to take care of those who have taken care of these lands for so many years. So on that note, I'm going to just do a grounding exercise. I just want to do this just as a moment, just to take a moment to kind of ground us in our bodies before we begin. I am going to talk about some things that, if you live with chronic illness, may feel triggering, may feel real, may help you feel seen, may be difficult. So the aim is not to fix, but to support. So we're just going to do what's called box breathing. You may have heard of it. You may do it. If you're a healthcare provider, it may be something you also teach. So I'd like you to take a breath in and hold it for 4 seconds. And breathe out for 4 seconds. And breathe in for 4 seconds. And breathe out for 4 seconds. This is just a moment, and just one way, one of the many ways it helps us to bring us back into our bodies. So I'm going to start there, and we're going to talk a little bit about living with chronic illness. So by definition, chronic, I'm going to talk a little bit back and forth between life-limiting progressive illness and chronic illness as they differ, but I am going to use them sometimes interchangeably. I will try and define the differences between the two. But chronic illness, chronic life-limiting illness, is a condition that is long-lasting and incurable, ultimately leads to death. It's characterized by progressive decline in health and function with shortened life expectancy. Chronic illnesses can be managed long-term, but life-limiting chronic illnesses will inevitably progress towards death. Not all chronic illnesses are life-limiting, and vice versa. This term specifically refers to those where death is foreseeable outcome. Now, I am a palliative care nurse. I work as a clinical nurse specialist, and I often see people with both. So I see people with chronic life-limiting progressive illness, and I also see them with chronic illness that's sometimes superimposed. The first thing I want to talk about when we talk about discussing what chronic illness is, I'm going to give you a personal lived experience example. So I'm somebody who lives with a chronic illness. I have an autoimmune disorder. I have Graves' disease. Ironically enough, I work in palliative care, so the name feels apt, but Graves' disease is hyperthyroidism. So it's the opposite of what many, many people have. Less people know about hyperthyroidism. But for me, when I was first diagnosed, it was really scary. Even though I'm a healthcare provider, and even though I spend a great deal of my time advocating and supporting other people through their illness journey, I never considered myself as somebody who might live with a chronic illness. I also have arthritis. I've fractured my elbow at roller derby, and I have 3 plates, lovely, all the way through my arm, and I have arthritis, and where those plates are, I've developed arthritic development there. I have to admit, I felt betrayed by my body. I thought it was strong, I thought it was healthy, and I felt somehow betrayed. And this is not uncommon. This is not an uncommon experience for people with chronic illness. And sometimes the symptoms are visible to everyone, and sometimes they are not. And this can make it really difficult because sometimes they're easily seen in things like tumors or wounds or skin changes. But some of the ones that we might not see, or unless we're attuned to them, are things like shortness of breath, sometimes referred to as dyspnea, or pain, which is an incredibly personal, multidimensional experience, or fatigue, or exhaustion. I just want you to remember, as the third point of this, that if you experience and if you are suffering with chronic illness, you are not alone. There are hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people who experience chronic illness every day. There are thousands of people who get new diagnoses each day. That's not to say that there's always someone worse off than you, but to say that you are not alone in this journey. And I also acknowledge that your journey is also unique to you. So let's talk about that. And it's really about opening up a bit of a dialogue about this. So the body under stress, there is an increased prevalence and personal perception of pain, both physical and emotional. And we often become less responsive to standard analgesia when our body is under stress. So when we live with ongoing illness, our nervous system often stays on high alert, like the body is constantly preparing to respond to danger, even if there is no immediate threat. This is called a state of chronic stress activation, or being in your fight, flight, or sometimes freeze or fawn mode. This is also sometimes where we say people are outside of their window of tolerance. Over time, this can amplify your symptoms like pain or inflammation, if you're feeling fatigue, or if you're feeling brain fog. Not because we're imagining them, but because the body is in a constant state of survival. Now, all of these can be cyclical, contributing and exacerbating others. So fatigue can feel overwhelming and unrelenting, especially when we add the mental load of our routine and our daily work on top of things, and then add on top of that healthcare, navigating the healthcare or medical system, or feeling well within our regular tasks. So I want you to consider a scenario now. I just want you to consider it. So you come home from work and you stub your toe on the kitchen island. Ouch. Insert your expletives here. Now, you may have children running around, screaming at each other, playing tag throughout the house. Your dog is barking away, chasing after them. You just realize, looking at the island, there's a bill that's past due. And because you forgot to pay it, because you had a flare up last week, you meant to pay it. You thought you did. You didn't hit send. And when you came in, it didn't get paid, and you didn't get paid again yet this week. So you're not getting paid till next week, and you're already at kind of the brink. Do you think that your experience of stubbing your toe is better, worse, or the same, as if you didn't have any or all of those stressors? Now, I can assure you that I imagine that though you might be grateful to have a home filled with loving family and happy children and bills to pay, okay, maybe not that one, but I'm sure you're grateful for the electricity it brings. The pain, the fatigue, and any of those feelings that you might feel are often amplified by all those additional stressors, even if they're things you're grateful to have in your life. And all of this can have an impact and disrupt your immune system and increase difficulty in regulating your inflammatory response. So you're always in an inflammatory response. This can make it incredibly difficult for you to navigate even the most basic of tasks. So some of the common symptoms and challenges that we often see in chronic illness, and I'm going to go through some diagnoses. This is not a comprehensive list, so I just want to be really clear about that. I could go on for days and days talking about chronic illness and pain and symptomology, but I have about 25 minutes, so I'm going to try and keep it tight. One of the first ones that's probably most common is pain, whether that's physical or emotional pain. These are often exacerbated by each other as well. So if you're experiencing emotional pain, feeling stress in other aspects of your life, it is not uncommon for your physical pain, that perception you feel, to feel completely amplified. So if you're feeling extremely stressed, the pain that you feel in your body likely feels substantially worse than it would if we could calm down and quiet some of those other areas of your life. Now, some conditions, physical pain is a main characteristic, and those living with it always experience some level of pain. So some of the examples of this that we see typically in chronic illness are things like arthritis. Some people live with what we call a comfort function goal of maybe a 3. Maybe your standard pain is at a 3 at all times. Maybe it's a 5. Now, chronic pain syndromes, degenerative disease, fibromyalgia, MS, all of these often have underlying pain syndromes and pain experiences. And there's different types of pain. I'm not going to go into somatic and visceral and neuropathic and complex pain syndromes. But it is not uncommon that anybody who's experiencing any of these chronic illnesses, especially if you experience more than one, to experience a level of pain physically, but also emotionally, consistently. And chronic pain means something that lasts for 3 months or longer. That's kind of how we categorize it in healthcare. Now, fatigue is a common symptom that comes from this. Being fatigued is not the same thing as just feeling tired after a long day. Fatigue is something that you feel almost in the depths of your soul. So as somebody who sometimes experiences this when I have a flare, I actually feel like I can't get out of bed. I have to fight and struggle to get out of bed. And fatigue is common in many chronic illnesses. Common diagnoses that experience this can include things like chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, which is an umbrella term that encapsulates multiple respiratory illnesses, heart failure, diabetes, many autoimmune disorders, including Hashimoto's, Graves' disease, which is hyperthyroidism, hypothyroidism, lupus, fibromyalgia, Parkinson's, and of course, depression. Now, some of the other symptoms that people often experience are digestive issues. These ones can be really challenging. It can mean sometimes that you have issues with your bowels. It sometimes means that you have gastrointestinal upset or inflammation. You might have cramping. And thyroid disorders like hypo and hyperthyroidism are very common with this. You often see the inverse of each. Irritable bowel, Crohn's disease, certain cancers, of course, and hepatitis all can contribute greatly to digestive issues. Anxiety as well. So people who have a history of anxiety absolutely can have digestive issues. Some of the breathing issues that we sometimes will see, so this sometimes can come from anxiety, sometimes it's called shortness of breath or dyspnea. And it is a very personal experience. So sometimes we can see that you're taking forever to breathe and you're having a difficult time and you're using those accessory muscles. But sometimes it's really difficult for us to see how breathless you're actually feeling. And it can be reduced oxygenation, difficulty breathing, catching your breath. In disorders and diseases like COPD, anxiety, heart failure, cystic fibrosis, pulmonary fibrosis, and sleep apnea are just some examples where we see chronic illness or chronic life-limiting progressive illness, where breathing issues are a common symptom that we frequently will see, and we can sometimes anticipate, which means that we can better treat them if we can anticipate them. Mood disorders, so increased prevalence of clinical depression in people with chronic illness. So it is not uncommon for people with chronic illness to also have clinical depression. And this is not being sad for a day. This is like actual clinical depression where you are diagnosed with it and you go through the process and you might need medication and additional supports. You might need psychotherapy to help you through. And some of these are cancer. So pancreatic cancer is a very specific example of this, where we actually commonly expect people to have some level of a depression. Parkinson's, people who have had several strokes or just one stroke or myocardial infarcts like a heart attack. And in dementia, we commonly see this as well. And then one of the other changes that we commonly see, and I think a lot of people struggle with, are weight changes. Sometimes they're weight changes, sometimes they're skin changes, sometimes they're one or the other, or sometimes they're both. And in this case, they can be for several reasons. Sometimes it's what's happening mechanically in the body. And sometimes it's actually because of the medications you're on that might contribute to these weight changes or skin changes. So some of the examples that we see weight changes most commonly in are things like diabetes, heart disease, COPD, depression, anxiety. Certain types of cancer because of medications is not uncommon. So if somebody has a bone, brain, or lung cancer, we often use corticosteroids frequently to help reduce the inflammation of the tumor. Sometimes that means that it leads to additional water retention. We see ballooning and weight changes because of that. We also see skin thinning. So these are common side effects that we anticipate. And in certain types of cancer, you might also see what's called cachexia, where there is muscle wasting. So no matter how much you're eating, it doesn't matter because your body is metabolizing it too fast. You're not taking any of the nutrients from it the way that it's supposed to be metabolized. We also see this in thyroid diseases as well. So what do we do to reduce suffering? So sometimes in healthcare, you'll hear us say the new normal. Now, what the heck does that mean? So what we mean by that is that your body is changing, and the things you were once able to do before, you might not be able to do the same way now or at all. And I want to emphasize the fact that acceptance isn't the same thing as giving up. So acceptance is sometimes difficult. Sometimes it's incredibly difficult or feels impossible. You may feel betrayed or let down by your body and or the healthcare system. But you may be right that this does not change where you are. So it does not mean that you're giving up. In palliative care, we are often sometimes referred to as, oh, there's nothing more we can do for you. Here's some palliative care. And that's actually a failure of our system, because the reality is palliative care doesn't necessarily mean we can cure you, but we sure as hell can care for you. And it looks different. So sometimes there's futility in treatments and interventions. Sometimes they're not going to help. So offering them, one of the questions I often ask healthcare providers is, who are we doing this for? Are we doing this for the patient because it aligns with their wishes and their values and what their hopes and outcomes are? Or are we doing this because we're uncomfortable having a conversation to say, we don't have any more treatments to try and cure you. This is what we can do to keep you more comfortable, however. These are really important pieces. There is a difference between cure and control, but the other thing that I would encourage you to try to reframe is being curious. So be curious about your illness, ask questions. I would also encourage you to try to reframe hope. So we may not be able to cure you, as I said, but we sure as hell can care for you. And I promise you this. I know many, many colleagues and many of my colleagues that I look up to and stand upon the shoulders of giants upon. We may not be able to cure you, but we really can help. And be curious about your illness. Learn about it from reputable sources and ask questions. Write things down. What does this illness typically look like? What treatments and interventions are available, and to who and when? What supports are available for those living with this illness? Are there reputable sources, and how can you access them? I would encourage you to ask your healthcare providers, where should I look for resources if I want to do my own research? Because I can tell you right now, you're not always going to get the right answer from Google. I promise you, you won't. I don't care how good a researcher you are. If you aren't looking at the right reputable sources, you're only going to get part of the answer. And it's just often from one lens. And if something doesn't feel right for you, speak up, say something. It is our jobs as healthcare providers to work with you and to help you get to your healthcare goals. So what are you feeling now? So I'm just going to take pause in this moment and just ask you, do you feel safe in your own body? Why or why not? Just right now, do a mental check-in. What is happening in your body? Do you feel tense? Do you feel anxious? Do you feel pain? Do you feel tired? Are you sick of hearing my voice? Do you feel disengaged? Do you feel enthralled? What are you feeling? One of the questions I like to ask people when they're having a really hard time and maybe they're in a flare or an exacerbation for their illness is, do a 5 senses check-in. So what do you feel? What can you actually touch? What can you see? What do you smell? What do you hear? What are you tasting right now? How do each of these impact how you're feeling? And do any of them bring you comfort? Take stock of this. Do they increase your pain? Do they increase your agitation? So I'm going to give you an example. When I smell fresh coffee, like percolating coffee and wood burning, I am brought to my grandparents' house and I feel comfort and safety and warmth. Even when I'm feeling uncomfortable or in pain, if I smell those things, I'm automatically transported to a place of safety, warmth, and comfort for me. It is grounding. However, when I hear music on, when I am trying to read or work, I get incredibly overwhelmed and frustrated and anxious. And I feel very out of sorts and out of my window of tolerance, which makes my exacerbations much, much worse. Take stock of how you're feeling in moments of stress, and it can help you to acknowledge what's happening, to sometimes quiet them down and feel that discomfort so it's less uncomfortable. It might not go away. In chronic pain, it's very rare for us to get to a 0 out of 10. But what's more comfortable for you? What is tolerable? Sometimes being able to give language to how you're feeling helps those that you love and trust better understand your experience as well. And if you haven't intimately experienced chronic illness, it's very difficult to resonate or understand what it's like. But giving yourself the language and words to help identify it can be helpful not only for you, but those you love, as well as those that support and are caring for you. So pacing and energy, I'm going to talk very quickly about this because I'm aware of our time because of our technical difficulties. So what do you need right now? So one of the things that I love to use is the spoon theory. If you've heard of it, just bear with me. I'm going to quickly go through it. But presence is powerful, and you can plan for rest, not only for productivity. It's not just about how productive you are in a day. Planning for rest when you have chronic illness is important. And energy conservation and planning can be incredibly helpful tools. So the spoon theory was developed by Christine Miserandino, a woman with lupus, and she was talking to her friend in a diner, telling her what it's like to live with lupus, an autoimmune disorder. And when she was talking to her friend, she basically got her to walk her through her regular day, and she was holding 12 spoons in her hand. And she goes, okay, walk me through your day. And she's like, okay, so I get up and I take my pills and I take my dog for a walk and I go for a shower. And then I get in the car and I go to work. And she's like, okay, so she takes away 4 of her spoons. So she's down to 8 spoons. She walks her through the rest of her day and she uses 5 more spoons. So she's down 9 spoons. She's got 3 spoons left and she gets home, but she's got to pack her kids' lunches. She's got to do laundry. She needs to shower and she needs to take the dog for a walk again. But she only has, 3 or 4 spoons left. So what she can do is she can use all her spoons today and maybe borrow from tomorrow because it's going to require more spoons, more energy. And then tomorrow she's going to start lower. Or she can prioritize what she needs to get done tonight and she might not get to all of the things. I often will teach my patients the spoon theory if they have the capacity for this and they're having a hard time understanding energy. It gives us a finite resource to talk about. And it can be really helpful because I know I always think back to one of my patients that I used to go into her room and I would say, all right, how are you doing today? How many spoons do you have? And she'd be like, I have 4 spoons today. And my next question would be, how do you want to spend those spoons? So oftentimes she would prioritize her children and she'd be like, I know it's my bath day, but I'm really not up for a bath. It's going to take all my spoons. I really just want to save them up for my children. That's energy conservation. And that's okay. It gives us a language to have conversations about. I encourage you to look into it. I find it a really helpful tool. As somebody with a chronic illness, I find it really helpful. I communicate with some of my friends who also have chronic illnesses, and I'll sometimes ask them how their spoons are doing. And sometimes people give you their spoons. Some people fill us up, but sometimes we just don't have very much. One of the things that's really important for us is to take our time and pace yourself. Sometimes this looks like saying no. It might be breaking tasks down into smaller chunks at different times. Sometimes it might mean prioritizing what you want to spend your spoons on when you have more spoons. Planning ahead, using adaptive devices can be incredibly helpful. My father-in-law, I recently he has severe COPD. I brought him to an appointment. I make him bring his walker. He walks fine without it. But I bring it anyways because my fear is that sometimes we go to a waiting room and there are no chairs and he's going to have to stand. If he brings his walker, he can sit and there's always a chair for him. We have done this where he's had to sit and it's just a portable chair for him. So the other thing you can do is see if you can sit or lie down when doing tasks or meetings or appointments and ask for help. Managing flare-ups, the biggest thing that I want you to know is to be kind to yourself. Give yourself some grace, okay? It is common, and it is more common as you progress to have more flare-ups and exacerbations, especially if you have a life-limiting progressive illness. One of the other things you can do is create a flare care kit or, pardon my swearing, a holy shit kit. So comfort items, distraction tools, a call list of who to call when you're in a crisis, what needs to be done, what are the things that bring you comfort. I also put reminders in my phone or printed things that might be encouraging or inspiring, things that will maybe help you to ride the wave. So this too shall pass. I can ride this wave out. And call for help if you need it. This is not a failure. Sometimes it's a necessity. Asking for help from other people is sometimes a necessity. So before I finish, I'm just going to touch briefly on grief, loss, and identity. So grieving is normal in chronic illness and in all loss. It is a human experience and a response to loss. You are still you. You are just evolving into something different. And sometimes we search for meaning in pain, and sometimes that meaning is that life is hard, and sometimes it just sucks. And that's okay. It's okay to feel sad and take moments for that and make space for your grief. We are allowed to grieve. We are allowed to be sad, angry, upset, or whatever else you may feel. There is a duality in chronic illness, and at least as I see it, the duality is that sometimes it sucks and it's hard and it's often misunderstood, but you also are not alone. And this is very much a part of the human experience for so many people. Almost all of us will go through some level of chronic illness or chronic life-limiting progressive illness at some point in our life. And because of this, one of the gifts it's given me is given me some grace, not only for myself, but for others. So know your body best and know that you live there. So I want to leave you with this. You do not have to do it alone, but you are often the first to be able to sound the alarms if something is off or not feeling right. You live in your body, you know it best. Even if your most challenging times, there's richness and value. My hope is that you feel marginally more equipped and being able to start some of these conversations and share your experiences. As healthcare providers, we know a lot, but we always have more to learn. Your stories and experiences help us to learn and to better understand how to walk through the world with you and support you in living more fully. Regardless of your prognosis, you are not dead until you're dead, and it is time to get on living. So on that note, I just want to say thank you. And if you ever want to contact me, please feel free to reach out to me either via LinkedIn, or if you have consultation or speaker inquiries, please reach out to me. It's my first name and my last initial at Hotmail. I also have a blog I haven't written in a long time because I've had a lot of grief. But if you ever want to reach out, please don't hesitate. Thank you for taking the time and giving me the time to share this with you.
Thank you so much, Mahogany. That I totally enjoyed your presentation. I love that you shared your story and shared how you yourself are and have been affected by your own chronic illness. I love what you shared about acceptance not meaning that you have given up. Because I think a lot of people mistake that. They feel like if I accept this diagnosis or what's happening to me, then that means that I've given up. And that's absolutely not the case. And I love the self-advocacy is so important for us to do our own research and to ask to be guided in that research. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that. Completely agree that Google can be very misleading. I say it to patients all the time. Sometimes even, as you said, the little snippet of information, it's not that it's inaccurate, but there's so much more context surrounding it that's missing. And last but certainly not least is this whole spoon theory and the holy shit kid. I love that.
That was like part of my swearing, I'm sorry. But sometimes that's how it feels.
Yeah. And being kind to ourselves. We really do need to give ourselves grace. So I thoroughly enjoyed the presentation and thank you a million for being
My
here
pleasure.
and for sharing with us and for sharing your story. So up next, we are going to have Missy Moore. I do not want to mispronounce your first name, Missy.
It's Artemisia, but Missy is fine. Missy is fine.
Yes. So we have Artemisia up with us next, and she as well has quite the repertoire. So she's a certified hospice nurse and end-of-life doula based in Washington, D.C. with 39 years of nursing experience. Travels across the United States training nurses and communities on topics from mental health first aid and wound care to hospice and care of older adults, and she partners with national organizations to bring practical, compassionate education to local communities. Missy serves on several national boards and committees, including the DC Practice and Ethics Committee, the HPCC DIB Committee, and the Palliative Care Committee of the DMPs of Color. And she was selected as a 2024 Alzheimer's Fellow by the National Black Nurses Association and as a 2023 Nurse Scholar at the International Council of Nurses. Her work has earned multiple national honors, including Hospice LPN of the Year in 2014, National Black Nurses Association Community Nurse of the Year in 2012, and the Lillian Kuster Award from the National Federation of Licensed Practical Nurses in 2012. I'm so glad that you agreed to join us today. So
Thank you, Dr. Reese. Thank you so
I
much
know
for
that
having me.
we're going to have more of a conversation
We
than
are. The first thing that I want to highlight is Mahogany's talk. Mahogany had so many great points about patients who have chronic illnesses. And, just to follow up on what she said, from my experience and in the communities that I serve, a lot of it has to do with the information that the patients have, the health literacy of the patients. That seems to be the barrier, the beginning barrier to the care that they get. You know, health literacy is a person's ability to seek information. Once you seek the information, to utilize the information for health services. And when they did a study in the US, and this was some years ago, what they found was less than 50% of the people who had some type of illness did not understand their health information. So when we think about why people aren't getting what they need, part of it has to do with they don't understand. Mahogany talked about great ways to help people with chronic illnesses. And a perfect example, I'll talk about my aunt because I love her. She's my mother's sister. She has heart failure. She has a pacemaker, but it wasn't until maybe 3 years ago that she realized that she had a chronic illness. So here she is. She's had a pacemaker for 9 years. She's on all of these meds for heart disease, for congestive heart failure. And she kept saying, I don't know why they keep asking me to come back. What do these people want? I said, you have a chronic heart disease. She says, I don't know anything about it. So I'm talking about my own family, someone that I care for, that we're going back and forth. We're having all of these conversations, and she didn't realize that her illness was chronic, that it wasn't going to go away, and that she still had to keep coming back. So when we look at chronic illnesses in that context, sometimes we have to ask the patients, tell me what you know about your disease.
Yep. Yep. I've seen quite a number of patients, too many really, who even like we think, diabetes and hypertension, because those are the most common non-clinical diseases here in Barbados. And patients would come in, they would be diagnosed, they're given a prescription, they fill the prescription, they take it for a month, and then that's it.
Right.
So it's never been communicated to them, this is a chronic illness. This is something that now you have to continue to manage going forward. It's not going to go away with a box of pills. So we really do need to take the time to educate patients so that they really understand what's going on with them.
And you know what else, Dr. Reese, too? One of the things that Mahogany started off with was, talking about space and where people are and indigenous people. But we also need to consider the culture of people. I'll give you an
Yes.
example. My uncle has a thyroid problem, and they said, when we take your thyroid out, you're going to have to take this medication for the rest of your life. And you know what he said? Well, maybe I shouldn't let you take it out because I don't want to take any medication for the rest of my life. I had a patient one time who was indigenous. He would go to the doctor because of his family, but he also had a traditional medicine man, and the
Mhm.
medicine man would come to visit him for whatever it was that he did. The great thing about the medicine man was he did not stop him from coming to see other providers for his illness. But that's something that we have to keep in context too. Is one of the reasons why they're not managing their chronic illness, does it have to do, is it in line with their values, with their
Exactly.
rituals, with
Hmm.
their culture?
Hmm.
Because if it is, then they're not going to do it. And they aren't going to say, I'm not going to do it. They're just going to nod their head. They're going to take the prescription, right? And
Exactly.
that's right. And when you do find out that for whatever reason they aren't doing some of the things that we talked about, it takes a lot of questioning to find out why they aren't doing some of the things that we're asking them to do.
Mhm.
Mahogany laid out a great way for people to be on board with their chronic illnesses. But I look at the other side because a lot of the people that I work with are not in line with their chronic illnesses. They don't want to take any medication for it. They don't
Yeah.
understand that it's chronic, and
Hmm.
that is things that we're putting in place to to help care for it. I had a patient one time talking to her about palliative care. She had heart failure, she had COPD, she had a trach.
Hmm.
I said, so let's get together. We'll get the group. We'll have respiratory here. We'll have PT here. She said, what are all of these people coming for? And I said, let me explain it to you. We're going to bring in all of the services. Let them evaluate you. And the ones that you don't need, they'll fall off.
Hmm.
But then you'll keep the ones that you have to have. She said, now, that makes sense. But because initially she was going to say, I don't want who are all of these people? I don't want all of
Yeah.
these people. So some of it has to do with what it is that that we explain.
Hmm.
Not when I realized that less than 50% of the patients that I care for understood what I was talking about. It
Hmm.
really made me sit down and think about how I can have better conversations about them and what they know.
Yeah.
First
Yeah.
is finding out what they know,
What they know. Yeah.
right? And then the second thing is what they're willing to deal with.
Correct. I just had this conversation with somebody.
What are they willing to deal? I asked, what are you willing to live with? So
Hmm.
recently I had a gentleman. He was in his room. He looked distraught. I just went in to say hello, and I was like, "You look like you're upset." He said, "5 fellas just came in here with a with some paperwork, and I don't necessarily fill out paperwork. I got to wait till my daughter comes." And he said, "And they want me to do some take some directions." And I was like, "Directions?" And he was trying to say advanced care directives.
Right. Uh-huh.
So I was like, oh, yeah, I know. I said, that must have been the palliative team. He's like, well, I don't know what the fellows were talking about. I was like, so basically what they wanted to know was, if you were to get bad off sick, whether or not you want to have like a natural death, just go in your sleep, or do you want something else? He said, is that what they were talking about? I said, yeah. He said, well, what else you got? I said, you can, they have a ventilator if you want to be on a breathing machine. He was like, no, I don't want that. I said, well, if you can't eat, they can put a tube in your stomach. And he said, they didn't mention, them fellas didn't mention none of that when they came in. I said, well, that's what the whole paperwork thing was about. He said, now I get that. I can talk to my daughter about that because I don't want any of that stuff. Something as simple as that. The man, he was like, I'm not filling out no paperwork. I don't know what this is all about.
Exactly. Exactly. I
What is
think
it that you're willing to
sometimes,
do? What is it that you're willing to live with?
yeah, yeah.
Very simple language.
But I find as healthcare providers, sometimes we just want to go in and say what we want to say and get our message across
Mm-hmm.
without finding out first, as you said, what does the patient already know?
Right.
And what do they want to know? What are they able to handle at this
Mm-hmm.
point in time? Don't just go throwing information at them. And also, when we're providing the information that they've said that they're willing to have, make sure that they actually understand it.
I think the patient can tell you what was told to them, but they don't know what it means. Another example,
Exactly.
my aunt, she was having some heart problems. Every week she's going to the cardiologist. I was like, what are they saying? Because she's in Philly. And she was like, well, the fellas are real, the gentlemen are very nice there. After like 4 weeks in a row, I said, I'm going to fly to Philly, find out what's going on. So I go up in there, 4 residents come in. Oh, Miss Jackson, you see this? Yeah. Well, I want you to look at this for your heart, this, that, and the other. She says, well, thank you very much. I'm glad y'all came back to talk to me again. And I said, hold it 1 second. I was like, Aunt Ronnie, do you know what they're talking about? She says, I have no idea. I said, you know what, Aunt Ronnie? I said, they want you to get a pacemaker. And I said, it's kind of like of an ignition for a car. So like when you put your key in and turn it, it helps to keep your heart running smooth. She was like, oh, is that it? I was like, yeah, they want to know if you want one. She said, well, if it'll make me feel better, I'll get it. She was like, oh, she said, that's what they've been talking about for 4 weeks. So they went and got the consent. They came in and the doctor said, so do you work in healthcare? I was like, something like that. So they're giving her all of this information. And my aunt is a bright woman, but she didn't understand they wanted her to get the pacemaker. They telling her about this pacemaker. And she going, no, I think that's nice. She didn't think it was for her. She didn't think it was for her.
Oh
And
my
and
gosh.
and to that point, it's more people than not that don't understand it. Like taking
Mhm.
medication for blood pressure. Oh, I took it. My blood pressure is good now. I don't need to take it anymore.
Exactly. Or I think a huge part of that as well with both hypertension and diabetes is I
Mhm.
feel okay, so,
Why am I taking it?
why am I taking it? I
Why am
feel
I taking
fine.
Yeah. Some of the other things are resources specifically for the patient and family, because trying to manage chronic illnesses and all of the things that you need to do can be troublesome. It can be,
Mhm.
especially if somebody has to work, if you're in the sandwich generation. So that means that you may be taking care of your
Yeah.
children, taking care of your
Right, right.
parents, or
Mhm.
taking care of a spouse. Um, and as I said, you have to pull in all of your resources and then let the ones fall off that you don't need. So,
Mhm.
disease state organizations, the Diabetes Association, the Heart Association, Alzheimer's Association, any of those associations that are going to help you, give you some good information and local resources to help you get the support that you need. Also, community health programs. They may
Mhm.
have they have centers of excellence for certain types of diseases all over. So, and so in my area, the American Diabetes Association, our DC chapter, they're very, very community focused. So much so that they have legislation written so that no one would have to pay more than $25 copayment for their insulin.
That's great.
Also, faith leaders, you know, as a Christian growing up, when you got sick, you went to the church.
Yep.
And guess what? Churches have been taking care of the sick and the shut in for a long time. They're reaching out to healthcare providers. There are healthcare providers in the congregations that come and support
Mm-hmm.
families with issues. That's the place for them to go,
Yep.
because the faith leaders may have some groups that they can tap into, even to help them with providing care. Um, Also, home care, hospice, social workers. People, sometimes they feel a little not that great about social work because they feel like they're getting in their business. But I mean, I'm being honest, but when
It's
you need,
true.
they'd be like, she want to know what? I don't know. I don't know about this. But I'd rather that you ask for what you need now, because when you get to a state when you have to have something right then it's enormous amounts of money and a lot of stress.
Mm-hmm.
Also, family support systems, because caring for somebody is not easy. And then patient support system, because being sick is not easy. Your role in your family has changed.
Mm-hmm.
Come ill. You
Yep.
might have been the leader, but now everybody is
But
coming to
now,
you.
correct. And you feel like a burden.
Yes, yes. So that role change is big for the patient and also for the person that's the caregiver. And just patient support in the way that they see fit, because as a healthcare provider, one of the things that I learned was I got to ask people what they want, because I come in with all of these great ideas and they be like, girl, I'm too sick for that, I can't do that. So tell me what I can do to help you.
Mm-hmm.
I need a ride to get to the doctor's office, because 3 hours on the bus is too much. See, that's something that I can do. You know what
Mm-hmm.
I mean? Or have all of my appointments done at the same time, so that when I
Yes.
go over to the facility, I can get everything done in a day. We have to think about those types
Mm-hmm.
of very small things that
Mm-hmm.
help people in their illness, in their wellness.
Exactly. Exactly.
That's
And
right.
to help them to, although this illness is present,
Mm-hmm.
you don't have to, in medical school, we talked about something where someone would adopt the illness role.
Mm-hmm.
That doesn't have to define you. Like
That's
there's
right.
so much more to you than your illness. And it's not that we are invalidating your illness or downplaying it,
Mm-hmm.
but trying to remind you that, there are other things, other aspects of your life that you can find joy in.
That's right. That's right.
And granted, some days you are just going to feel, and I think Mahogany mentioned it in her presentation, some days you're just going to feel like, what the hell?
Mm-hmm.
And and that's okay. That's
Mm-hmm.
okay. But it's also really important to be able to identify the parts that are okay or
Mm-hmm.
are better than okay, because those are the things that are really going to come in clutch
That's right. That's
on
right.
some days when you really need them to.
One of the things that I've learned is when I have a patient that isn't participating in their care,
Hmm.
where they're constantly coming back and they're just okay, but not well, not
Hmm.
thriving, then it's been my experience that it's a piece of something that they don't understand.
Hmm.
It's a piece of it that they don't understand. I want to go over this with you again.
Hmm.
Can you tell me why you're taking A, B, and C? And sometimes, and you know what, it's just from reviewing things, stuff like that, because sometimes they're just overwhelmed with with illness and treatment, where they decide, this just seems like it's too much.
Mm-hmm.
And you know what, you just have to ask the question. They keep coming back. They don't seem like they're as well as they could be, or getting better, starting to feel better. And part of it, my experience is a piece of something that's missing, or something that they've eliminated, or it could be mood. It's a lot of different things, and just asking really important questions about what it is that they're doing, why they feel like they aren't feeling better, or doing the treatment that they're supposed to, really gives you insight to help you figure out what it is, and or just coming to terms with is some things that they aren't going to do, and approaching it. You know
Mm-hmm.
what? You haven't been taking these. We've talked about it. It seems as though you don't want to take it. These are the options that you have. And then be honest with them. This is going to help you some, but you're not going to feel as well as you could be. Having those conversations is important as well, because when they feel like, it's just too much, then we don't need to continue to order things that we know for a fact they aren't going to do.
They are going to take. Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah.
Yeah. And rather than, because then we end up getting frustrated as
Right.
well.
That's right.
And, like there are workarounds, there are ways around this.
It's working
And
out, and we have to give grace,
mhm,
because they're living in their body. We're not.
exactly. So even the grace I consider to be a workaround. Like
Mhm.
sometimes you just need to, you know what? I get that you are tired of this. And
Mhm.
hopefully if it was me, I would be tired too.
Right.
So
Right. One of the other things that Mahogany talked about was pain, physical pain and emotional
I
pain.
was gonna bring that
And
up. Yeah.
yeah, and the other piece of it is spiritual pain, because
Spiritual. Yep.
depending on your culture, um, we just have to remember that suffering has to do with what our culture is, and that we don't want suffering. But in some cultures, suffering is a part of living.
Hmm.
And some people believe that suffering in this life will decrease their suffering when they come back. So
Yeah.
we have to consider that too. uh, that spiritual piece of it really helps to pull everything
Mhm.
together for us.
Yeah. And then the people who, when because of the suffering, the
Hmm.
physical pain and what have you,
Hmm.
feel like, what did I do to deserve this?
Right.
So all of that falls under spiritual
Hmm.
suffering as well, or feeling guilty,
Right.
or just that existential, where, like, how did I get here?
Right.
Why is this happening to me?
Right. That's
Type
exactly right.
thing. Yeah, and Mahogany made a really good point in that very often emotional pain, spiritual pain can
Hmm.
make physical pain worse.
That's right. That's right.
And, there have been patients who you've tried every available drug there is for physical pain. You have titrated up
Hmm.
and there's still no change,
That's right.
because you need to get to the root of the emotional pain. Like
That's right.
what is hurting them?
Right.
And very often once that is addressed
Right.
adequately, then you'll find, oh, they're not having any more
And more
physical.
pain. Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, well, this has been an awesome
It
evening.
has
I
been.
really
Mahogany was
enjoy it.
unbelievable. She was unbelievable.
Yes, she was. And so are
Yeah.
you with your
Oh,
insight.
that's sweet of you. Thank you. Yeah.
So thank you so much for coming.
Thank you for
Those of
having me.
you
Thank you.
who tuned in, thank you so much. And remember to share it, because it will be available for replay on
Okay.
YouTube.
Okay.
And you can also catch it on our website, www.CompassPalTravel.com. So have a great evening
You
and thanks
too. Thank you so
again.
long.